I knew we were in trouble when my daddy said, uh-oh. We were in the middle of a family adventure, a cross-country road trip from North Carolina to California. I had just finished the second grade. We were traveling in a white Corvair pulling a pop-up camper. Now, the tiny Corvair might not have been the best choice for that trip. It was Chevy's answer to the Volkswagen Beetle. So it was too small for four people, too underpowered to be pulling a camper, and the closest thing it had to air conditioning were four windows that you could crank up or down. It was 11 o'clock at night. I was riding in the co-pilot seat up front with my dad. My older brother Doug and my mom were asleep in the back seat. And for the past hour, we had been struggling up this steep mountain somewhere in the Rockies. And that's when my daddy said, uh-oh. What's the matter, Dad? Running low on gas, bud. If we make it down off this mountain tonight, it'll be a miracle. And right on cue, that Corvair said, chugga chugga, and began to slow down, almost to a stop. But it didn't stop. The ground leveled off, and we were coasting, and now we were rolling downhill and gathering speed. In less than a minute, we were zipping around some of those mountain curves a little too fast. We came down off that mountain a whole lot faster than we went up. And as we approached the bottom, for the first time since we set off, we saw store lights. And those store lights were at a gas station. And that gas station was open. My daddy glided our rig to a stop right in front of the gas pump. And he slumped forward with his head on the steering wheel. I said, that was a miracle, huh? Without lifting his head, my daddy said, it sure was, buddy. It surely was. And later that day, we all went to church. Now, don't get me wrong, we didn't go to church because of the gas miracle. We went to church because it was Sunday. That's just the way it was in our family. If it was Sunday, we were going to church. No excuses, no discussion, and if you were sick, you better have a note from your mom. And it did not matter if we were visiting my grandparents in Statesville, North Carolina, or my aunt in Long Island, New York. Come Sunday morning, we were in church. But it wasn't until this trip that we discovered that my daddy had a superpower. My daddy knew the location of every church in the United States. My brother said, no, that ain't right. He only knows the ones between North Carolina and California. So that was still a lot. We could be in any campground, anywhere. And on Sunday morning, he would pile us into the car and drive straight to the church, like we'd been going there for 20 years. And there was no looking at maps or asking directions. And this was decades before anybody had a GPS phone. And it was usually to a Lutheran church. He would occasionally take us to an off-brand, like the Methodist or the Episcopalians. But that was only in an emergency. We went everywhere that trip. The Grand Canyon, Carlsbad Caverns, Petrified Forest. In California, my daddy drove our rig right through the middle of a giant redwood tree. In Yellowstone National Park, wow, we saw geysers and buffalo. And this one time, this little bear cub raised up on his hind legs and put his paws right on my window. We usually traveled in the daytime, but if we were running behind schedule, sometimes we would travel at night to make it home. And that's when my co-piloting skills came into play. My main job was to make sure my daddy stayed awake. So it was important work. But it was also a lot of fun. We sang a lot. We would start out with some of my daddy's favorites. Eddie Arnold, the last word, and lonesome is me. Nat King Cole. Ramblin' Rose, Ramblin' Rose. The Sons of the Pioneers. On this one, I got to sing the echoes. My daddy would start us out. All day I face the barren waste without the taste of water. Cool water, clear water, 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 water. And then we sing some of my favorites, which were mostly old folk songs. But my daddy knew all the fun versions. On top of spaghetti, all covered with cheese. George, you know it. I lost my poor meatball when somebody sneezed. You guys are good. And sometimes my dad would teach me versions of songs that my mama didn't think a second grader ought to know. Oh, the old gray mare, she came from Delaware. She pulled down her underwear. See what was under there, the old gray mare. She came from Delaware many long years ago. I told you it was fun. And sometimes, when things got quiet, we would just talk about stuff. Daddy, why are we Lutherans? Oh, well, the Lutherans saved your granddaddy. Well, what'd they save him from? From himself, mostly. You remember when we talked about the Great Depression? Yes, sir, there were no jobs and everybody was hungry. That's pretty good, boy. Well, your grandparents got married in 1930, right in the middle of all that, and I came along right away and had a pig, and there were some hard times, but your granddaddy started running with the wrong crowd. Ooh, where were they running to? No. That just means he was hanging out with people that made it easy for him to make some bad decisions. And he made a lot of them in there. But eventually he met a Lutheran preacher who spent a lot of time with your grandpa and helped him make some better choices. Does that make sense? Yes, sir. I tell you, you could learn a lot co-piloting with my daddy. Our last co-piloting adventure came when we tried to cross the desert in Texas. There were warning signs everywhere. Carry extra water. Be sure your gas tank is full. If your car overheats, you might die. Or worse. My daddy bought a canvas water bag and filled it up at the gas station, and he decided we would try to cross at night when it wasn't so hot. And we set off a little before dark. I was in the co-pilot seat, but there was no singing this trip. We rode in the darkness for a long time. And there was nothing to look at but our own headlights shining ahead in this endless stream of two-lane highway and sand. At one point, my daddy stopped the car. He didn't bother to pull off the road because there wasn't another car in miles. And he got out his flashlight and he's looking at his maps. And in a little bit, he handed me that flashlight and a piece of paper. And he said, "Keep an eye out for this campground." And then he turned us around. We went back in the direction we'd come from. Well, I shined that light onto a cartoon drawing of a camel. You could see his hump in the back, and he had two big eyeballs that were rolling in different directions. And his tongue was hanging out all the way down to the ground. And the name of the campground was The thirsty camel. Well, we rode on for a ways, and my daddy was slowing down to turn around again, and I said, there it is. And he swung the headlights over, and there was a little sign about a foot square, no words on it at all, just a picture of that cartoon camel. And there was a crossroads, and we took it. It's a little ways down. We found that campground. I don't remember setting up the camper at all, but it was about 3 o'clock in the morning when we all crashed out. When I woke up the next morning, the sun was up, but it was still early. I heard my brother roll over on the bunk down below me. My parents were still asleep over on their side. And I was thinking about how far we must be from anywhere when it dawned on me today was Sunday. And I'm ashamed to say it, but my very next thought was, bet I don't have to go to church today. 3 seconds later, the door to our camper opened. My daddy stepped in. He wasn't over there sleeping. He was out exploring. You boys get up and get dressed. There's a worship service at Campsite 7 in 30 minutes. It was a spectacular trip. It truly was. It's one I wish every American kid got to make. There's a postscript to this story. This was about 2 years ago. I was visiting my dad in the retirement home where he lives in Thomasville. And my dad, he lives there, and he is suffering from dementia and several other challenges. If you ask him what year it was, he might miss by 10 or 12 years. But on anything earlier than that, he's still pretty sharp. Daddy, you remember that trip to California we took when Doug and I were little? Well, of course I do. How did you know the location of all those churches? Well, back in the day, if the church wasn't up on Main Street, you'd get you a little sign, put it on the telephone pole that said, so-and-so church, 1 mile. So when we got to the town that was closest to our campground, I just started looking for those little signs, and I'd remember how to get back to one of them. Well, we both got a chuckle out of that, and I said, you ready to go get some lunch? My daddy looked at me like I was the biggest fool he had seen all week. No, it's time for church. Well, actually, it was 11:30 on a Tuesday morning, but I had learned not to argue. So I got behind his wheelchair and we set off. My dad's facility has 4 nearly identical long hallways off of the central hub. I'd never even been down any of them except the one my daddy lived on. I was going to see them today. Now, when I'm standing directly behind my dad, he cannot hear one word I say. So we had long ago worked out this system where he would just point and wherever it was he wanted to go, and I would take him there. I was his remote. Well, he started us down one of those long hallways and went all the way to the end. We turned around, we came all the way back out. Then he's pointed to another one, and we went up and down it. Then he pointed back at that first one where we had started. After 20 minutes of this, my daddy says, there it is. And we were about halfway down one of those hallways. There was a door there and a little sign beside it that said chapel. And I opened it up, and that's exactly what it was. There was a piece of framed stained glass on the back wall, and below it was a little short pew. Might have sat 4 people facing the door. So I pushed my daddy in, I closed the door, and I came around and sat on that pew facing him. I don't know which one of us started it, but we started singing hymns. And brother, let me tell you, we were belting them out. And if we didn't know all the words, that would slow us down one bit. Well, we did that a while, and about halfway through A Mighty Fortress, I realized I was singing a solo. My father had fallen asleep. As I wheeled him back to his room, I had to smile. My dad had lost so much of his physical strength and his mental sharpness, but he still had his superpower. My dad and I would never travel together again. But anytime I go anywhere, my father is with me. Thank you.